The neighbors laughed every time Daniel parked his dusty old car outside his cabin. To them, it was nothing more than a rusted junk heap, a shameful eyesore. HOA board members whispered during meetings, calling it an embarrassment to the neighborhood. But Daniel never reacted. He simply dusted off the hood each morning, ran his hand along the faded paint, and smiled as if he knew something they didn't. What nobody realized was that this car wasn't just any car. It held a secret so powerful, so valuable, that when revealed, it would shake the entire HOA to its core. But for now, Daniel let them mock. He let them sneer as Karen from the HOA shouted at him, "Get rid of that junk. You're lowering our property values." One evening, things escalated. The HOA delivered a final notice, threatening daily fines if Daniel didn't remove the vehicle immediately. The neighbors gathered on his lawn, pointing, laughing, certain he had no defense left. Daniel, calm as ever, folded the notice and tucked it into his pocket. Tomorrow, he whispered to himself, they'll see who's really in charge here. And with that, Daniel turned and locked his gate, leaving the HOA members murmuring in confusion. They had no idea that the very junk car they despised was the key to their downfall. The next morning, Daniel wheeled the car out into the sunlight. The rust glimmered faintly, but beneath it, the sleek curves hinted at something extraordinary. Karen arrived first, arms crossed, lips curled in disdain. "Are you finally towing that thing away?" she asked mockingly. Daniel didn't respond. Instead, he pulled out a thick folder of documents, spreading them across the hood. Soon, the rest of the HOA members arrived. Neighbors leaned over fences, waiting for the spectacle. Daniel finally looked up, his eyes calm but sharp. "This car," he said firmly, "is a 1963 Ferrari 250 GTO. One of only 36 ever built. Recently valued at over $2 million. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen laughed nervously, assuming it was a lie. But Daniel held up certified appraisals, auction records, and photos of the car restored to its original glory. The so-called junk was a hidden gem, and Daniel had preserved it carefully, waiting for the right moment. But then came the bigger shock. Daniel wasn't finished. "And while you've been mocking me," he continued, pulling out another folder, "I've been quietly buying up this entire block. Every lot. Every house you think you control." The crowd froze. Karen's face drained of color. Suddenly, the HOA wasn't mocking Daniel, they were terrified. The whispers spread like wildfire. Could it be true? Had Daniel, the quiet man with the junk car, really outsmarted them all? Karen demanded proof. "You don't own our block." "That's ridiculous." Daniel handed her a stack of property deeds. His name was printed clearly on each one. Over the years, while everyone dismissed him, he had been quietly purchasing homes as they went on sale, sometimes directly from owners desperate to leave under Karen's oppressive HOA. He let tenants stay, earning their trust, never flaunting his power until the right time. The neighbors shifted uncomfortably, realizing many of them were now living on Daniel's property. Karen's voice cracked as she tried to rally the board. "We'll fight this. You can't just take over." Daniel simply smiled. "I don't need to fight. I already own it." The HOA members were stunned. For years, they had mocked him, fined him, threatened him. Now, the very man they belittled controlled their future. And he wasn't finished yet. Daniel had one final move that would leave the entire neighborhood speechless. Karen's rage boiled over. She called an emergency HOA meeting, desperate to regain control. But when members arrived, Daniel was already there, sitting at the head of the table. He calmly placed his ownership documents on the desk. "Since I own the land, the HOA doesn't govern me," Daniel explained. "In fact, I now hold the authority to dissolve your board altogether." The room erupted in chaos. Some members begged him for leniency, others shouted accusations. But Daniel remained calm. For too long, they had bullied not just him, but countless families. His plan wasn't revenge, it was justice. Karen tried a last attempt. "We'll call the police." Daniel leaned forward, eyes steady. "Please do. And when they arrive, I'll show them the paperwork proving that every one of your threats against me was illegal." The room fell silent. For the first time, Karen realized she had no power left. And Daniel wasn't stopping at dismantling their board, he had something bigger in mind. The following week, Daniel hosted a neighborhood gathering. But unlike the HOA's rigid, controlling meetings, this one was warm, welcoming, and free. Families gathered around his cabin, children played, and laughter echoed through the air. Daniel unveiled his vision, a community without unnecessary rules, where neighbors supported each other instead of tearing one another down. He promised to repair common areas, lower fees, and ensure every resident felt respected. The crowd cheered. For the first time in years, hope returned. Even those who had once mocked him now looked at him with admiration, but Karen lingered at the back, fuming. She couldn't accept defeat. She swore she'd find a way to expose Daniel, to take back what she thought was hers. Yet deep down, even she knew the tide had turned. Karen launched a desperate campaign. She spread rumors, filed complaints, and even tried to rally outside support. But each attempt crumbled under the weight of Daniel's ironclad ownership. Neighbors who once followed her blindly now turned their backs, realizing she had been the source of misery for years. Daniel, however, never stooped to her level. Instead, he kept improving the community, investing in repairs, opening spaces for families, and creating an environment people were proud to live in. His junk car, now restored and shining, became a symbol of resilience. Karen, isolated and powerless, was left with no allies. Her voice, once the loudest in the neighborhood, was nothing more than an echo. Yet Daniel had one last surprise in store, something that would end the HOA's reign forever. On the day of the final announcement, Daniel parked the fully restored Ferrari at the center of the neighborhood. Its gleaming red paint drew gasps from the crowd. He stepped forward, his voice carrying with quiet authority. "This car," he said, "was mocked, just like me. But hidden beneath the rust was value beyond imagination. Just like beneath your HOA's cruelty, there was always potential for something better." He then revealed the final twist: he had officially dissolved the HOA. Effective immediately, no family would ever face unfair fines, threats, or intimidation again. The crowd erupted in cheers, tears streaming down some faces. Freedom had finally returned. Karen, defeated, walked away in silence. Daniel didn't gloat, he simply turned back to his neighbors, offering them a future built on respect, not control, and with that, the community celebrated not just the end of the HOA, but the beginning of a new chapter led by the man they once mocked. And that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you loved the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.